Back in the 60s and 70s, loyalty points didn't live on screens. They lived in carefully guarded booklets of green shield stamps. Forget the Apple Wallet and the digital rewards of today. These stamps were a currency of their own. Each trip to the store came with the thrill of adding a few more to your stash, slowly building towards that grand moment of redemption. Almost like that feeling when you're about to complete a page full of football player stickers. But these stamps weren't just for a lucky few. Everyone was into them. Whole families would save them, sticking stamps with intense dedication and watching the books grow thicker, all in the hopes of cashing in for something thrilling. Popular rewards included everything from toasters and kettles to garden tools and even furniture. For many, redeeming these stamps meant bringing home items they may have otherwise only dreamt about. A few fully loaded books could mean a new set of dishes, a vacuum cleaner, or camping gear. Many UK families even made day trips out of redeeming their collections. There were dedicated Green Shield redemption stores where the magic happened, like walking into a treasure trove. The pleasure of spending these stamps wasn't just in the rewards themselves, but in the ritual of saving and redeeming. Each stamp a reminder of past shopping trips, a way to see value in every purchase. For baby boomers, Panini football cards were more than collectibles. They were practically currency on the playground. In the 1970s, these cards took over playgrounds across the UK, with kids trading and swapping furiously to complete their sticker albums. But the ultimate use of the duplicates? Clipping them to bicycle spokes to transform an ordinary bike into a roaring street machine. The sound was unmistakable, a proper clackety-clack that made every ride down the street feel like you were in a motorbike gang. It wasn't just for a bit of fun, it was status. Kids would argue over which cards made the best noise, with plenty of sacrificial doubles, sometimes even treasured players, if the sound was worth it. Every British kid had their own Panini rituals, from endlessly thumbing through albums to swapping at school. And, of course, the thrill of completing that final page. But those duplicate cards in your bike spokes? They were pure childhood gold, the soundtrack of long summer days and neighborhood adventures. Before we move forward, if you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, then please give us a like and subscribe. Okay, let's keep going. For baby boomers, the Beatles weren't just musicians. They were our lads from Liverpool, representing a working-class spirit and hometown pride that resonated across the UK. When the Beatles exploded onto the scene in the early 1960s, it was as if the whole country lit up. Their success wasn't just a global phenomenon, it was a source of national pride. John, Paul, George and Ringo didn't come from privilege. They came from ordinary neighborhoods and brought a sound and look that broke the mold and gave British teens a new kind of idol. Their rise began right at home, in clubs like the Cavern in Liverpool, where they first built a dedicated following. It felt like every Brit could say they knew someone who had seen them live back in the day, before Beatlemania was even a word. Their catchy tunes, their cheeky charm, and that unmistakable Scouse wit quickly won over fans across the UK. They weren't polished pop stars. They were funny, real, and a little bit rebellious. Everything young Britons wanted in a time when music still felt stiff and formal. Then came their appearance on Thank Your Lucky Stars, and later, the Royal Variety performance where John famously quipped, "For the people in the cheaper seats, clap your hands. And the rest of you, if you'll just rattle your jewellery." Suddenly they were everywhere. A British cultural export redefining the image of the UK on the world stage. The Beatles' popularity crossed class divides and created a unity that was rare in the 60s. Fans from every part of Britain could relate to them, whether they were from a big city like London or a village in the countryside. Every new song release was an event, with lines forming outside record shops and radios tuned in for the latest Beatles hit. When the Beatles made it big in America, Britons watched with pride. For the first time, a group from Britain was invading America in a way that felt cool and triumphant. But no matter how famous they became worldwide, their Britishness, whether in their humour, their accents, or their references, never wavered. The Beatles were cultural icons who brought a sense of British identity into every household. For many baby boomers, Meccano wasn't just a toy. It was a rite of passage. Founded by Frank Hornby in Liverpool in 1901, Meccano was as British as tea and biscuits. Before Lego bricks came over from Denmark, Meccano was the go-to for any British kid with an imagination and a knack for making things work. Each kit came with metal strips, nuts, bolts and wheels, inviting kids to build everything from cranes to cars, all with that satisfying clink of metal. Meccano was a proud British invention, and it didn't just encourage play, it encouraged engineering. Kids were practically mini engineers, learning the basics of mechanics and construction by hand. British parents loved it too because it didn't just entertain, it taught valuable skills. Many boomers remember hours spent hunched over Meccano parts, wrench in hand, wrestling with tiny bolts and screws and figuring out how to build bridges and pulleys. It felt almost like preparation for the real world, and there was no greater pride than seeing your creation come to life. In Britain, Meccano sets were practically a family tradition. Like heirlooms passed down from siblings or even parents, each set came with stories attached. Some sets had even survived the Blitz, stored safely through the war years, waiting for the next generation to take them up again. A Meccano set in a British household was often well loved, with a history that connected kids to their parents and even their grandparents. For many boomers, the sight of a Meccano box still brings back memories of rainy afternoons spent tinkering in the living room, determined to build the tallest crane or the fastest motorized vehicle they could imagine. And it wasn't just at home. Meccano made its way into British schools and youth clubs too. Many a British kid remembers Meccano lessons where they learned to build functioning contraptions and even competed to see who could make the most elaborate design. It became so iconic that Meccano even published its own magazine, Meccano Magazine, which featured building tips, mechanical wonders, and news from the world of engineering, inspiring young builders across the UK. Meccano was more than a plaything. It was a gateway into the world of British engineering. Some kids even ended up working for companies like Rolls-Royce or British Aerospace, crediting their love of engineering back to those days spent fiddling with their Meccano sets. For British baby boomers, Meccano remains a nostalgic reminder of a time when play was hands-on, challenging, and wonderfully inventive. A true British classic that inspired generations of builders and dreamers. Manual typewriters were as much about the process as they were about the end result. The typewriter's satisfying click-clack as each letter struck the page was an addictive sound, like a metronome for creativity. For baby boomers, the typewriter was a portal to their thoughts, where each sentence felt deliberate and, most importantly, permanent. If you made a mistake, there was no delete button. Correction fluid became your best friend. Each boomer remembers the joy of reaching the end of a line, hearing that iconic ding, and sweeping the carriage back with a sharp, satisfying flick. And let's not forget that unmistakable typewriter smell, a blend of ink, metal and oil that every typist remembers fondly. Writing essays of letters required focus and patience, with every paragraph a commitment. For aspiring writers and journalists, the typewriter wasn't just a tool. It was a companion. Novels were born on those keys, ideas hammered out, letter by letter. With typewriters, writing wasn't a passive act, it was a rhythmic, physical experience. Many a boomer fondly recalls evenings spent hunched over a typewriter, each word a little victory in a world before the distraction of screens. For baby boomers, these aren't just memories, they're cherished snapshots from a time when the world felt a little simpler and happiness was homemade. From the ritual of saving stamps to transforming bikes into DIY masterpieces and chasing down Beatles albums, each moment is a thread in a fabric that will never fray. If you remember these days, hold on to them and celebrate them, because in their own way, these memories are every bit as priceless as the moments they captured. Thanks for watching Rewind with Richie. What was your favorite nostalgic memory? Do you actually remember any of these? If you've liked this video and want a part 3, please hit that thumbs up button, share, and subscribe. And if you've come here from part 1, make sure to check out my other nostalgic videos.